What's going on YouTube? My name is Jeremy Johnson with the Indie Investment Group. Today we're talking about financing and how everything gets started with the financing part of it. So stick around, this is going to be a quick one, but it's going to be good. All right, so before I get too far into anything, first off, I want to ask everybody to please like or subscribe to videos. It helps every single time, and I really do appreciate all of you helping us out. All right, so as we talk about financing, what we're really talking about more than anything is an exit strategy, and exit strategies exist in anything you're ever going to do with real estate. It's going to be whether or not you would intend up on just selling it and getting the money back out at the very beginning, which is similar to what people do with a flip, and that's what a lot of people do with that, and that's where you make your cash, and you're taxed on all the cash you make. With a hold, you get to actually use a lot of tax benefits to actually offset a lot of those gains, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be doing holds. Now, the problem with a hold is that you end up paying quite a bit, and as you finance, you end up putting 25% of the purchase price down. So you can realize that very quickly you can run out of capital. That's why in one of the other videos I talked about how we were losing capital at the same time that we were making money. So it's bizarre how that can work. So what I want to talk about is that there's a couple of easy strategies that are really well known. One of them is the BRRRR. Stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. BRRRR. So we've already done the buy, we're doing the renovate, we're going to be doing the rent very soon, and the next piece is going to be the refinance, and that's what I want to talk about today. So one of the first questions I get asked a lot is that, do you need a lot of money to start this? And the answer is yes. Or if you're going to be doing something different, like wholesaling or flipping in order to create capital, and once you've done this a few times, you can probably find somebody else that you can partner with in order to use their capital and then just pay them a large dividend, which is kind of what I do, where I was able to borrow a good amount of capital, show that I was making a dividend back on it, give them more capital back, and then take it again and continue to do that. So the reason why you have to have that is that right now, with the market being unbelievably hot, it is very, very difficult to buy good investment properties without cash. And so you almost have to have cash for acquisitions. Now, beyond that, you can start doing refinancing, or you can start doing loans for some of the rehabbing and remodeling costs. But you end up paying closer to between 10 and 15%. Our standard is we pay 12%. So I basically build into all of our calculations that we're going to pay 12% to do any type of remodeling costs. So for instance, if I need to borrow $30,000 for remodeling, that means I'm going to be paying $300 a month and then giving back the original $30,000 when it's all said and done. And it takes about 3 to 6 months. All right, so one of the reasons why financing is so darn difficult, and I wanted to show this to you all, is that right now, let's say that I want to do this on the duplex property. Let's assume that the duplex property is going to be worth around $270,000. Okay, so we need to be able to finance that set amount in order to get all of the money out. Now, originally, we paid $90,000 for the property, but we're going to be out approximately $60,000 in renovations for a total of $150,000 that we need to get back out of this property. All right, so I've got $270. Now, I'm going to assume that we actually aren't going to be able to get the full amount that we want for it. Let's assume that we can get it appraised at $260, which I think is absolutely within our range of possibility. That means that if I went to normally finance this, for most people you could say, well, a normal property I can finance at 80% down. That is correct if it is your personal dwelling. If it's going to be your primary residence, you can actually draw up to usually 80% on a standard loan, and in some places even go up to 90% for standard financing. The problem is that for a rental property, you're not going to be able to find that. What most places will let you do, if they'll even let you do it at all, is that they'll still let you do only 75%. So we will be able to do a mortgage, 75% mortgage, and that's going to be for $195,000. Okay? As you can see, this is more than that, so we should be able to make money out of the whole deal, or at least be able to pay back what we originally have into it. Now that gives us some room, so we could go down to a lower loan to value if we needed to. But the 195 isn't even necessarily the hardest part, because you should be able to say, well, I can just draw that out. Not necessarily. If I'm doing this as a personal loan, I have to have the debt to income to offset this payment. And so if we do this at a 30-year mark at 5%, Now, first off, most places won't even do the 30-year loans. On a lot of the rental properties, they're looking at 25-year amortizations. I found a few that'll do 30, and I've found a few that can go as low as 5%, and some that'll even go a little bit lower. But 5% seems to be about what I can find in order to do this. And if we do that, what ends up happening is that your payment comes out to $13. So funny enough for everyone, as I was looking over to get my total for what a 30-year note at 5% was, my computer ended up having a problem, and I've already recorded this segment twice now, so we're hoping that this time it goes. So it's always these little fun little technical issues. All right, so a 30-year note at 5% on this ends up being a whopping $10.47 a month. Now, the problem with financing for a lot of people on this is that this would be in your personal name. If you were to try to get a mortgage for $1,000, they would say that it's based off of your debt to income. So they want to know my personal income. I don't have enough income to offset that. And if it's in my personal name, they'll look at all of my income, all of my car payments, my other mortgages, credit card debts, anything, and say that I can't afford that, so I won't get this mortgage. So, but I say, but I'm making rental, and my rental income's pretty good. We think that we're going to be able to get approximately $11.50 per unit. So that's going to be times 2. We're going to be able to get $2,300 a month in income. That should easily offset that. Not so much. A traditional bank, they're going to look at that and say, well, you can't do that. This amount that you make on your rentals, you have to make that on for 2 years on all of your tax returns, and then we can use your rental amounts. Or some places say, well, yeah, you can use that if you want, but we'll do it at only 75% of its value. So they don't even give you the full amount towards that. So you're looking for specific investment bankers who specialize in doing rentals and specialize in doing income and doing income properties like this. So I have to get this out of my personal name as one. Because keeping this in my personal name, this debt will show up on anything else I want to purchase. So if I want to go out and buy, let's say I want to buy a house, well, this debt is there, and this income will not be there for years. So I have to get this out of my personal name. So I need to put this into an LLC. So what we end up doing is we end up putting all of this into an LLC, and I'm going to call it Indie Investment Group Holdings, let's say. Well, it has a duplex that's worth $260,000, and it's going to have income soon at $2,300 a month. Or you could look at that as approximately, once you take out some other holdings and stuff, it's a little over $27,000 a year. So if I came as a company and said, I own this duplex that's worth this amount of money and I have this amount of money coming in per year on it, then you actually get people that are interested because they're willing to invest with Indie Investment Group Holdings because they have this duplex that's making all this money. And now they say, all right, we'll go ahead and give you maybe 75%. But they need to make sure that you have enough income to pay your debt. Okay? So they want to see that first. And so they're going to calculate your net operating income. One of the key things they're going to talk about for net operating income, I've heard it referred to as PITI, and I kind of liked it. P-I-T-I. This is your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. Well, I know my principal interest, it's $10.47 a month. My taxes, however, actually change in Indiana. A lot of people don't know this, but your taxes in Indiana are 1% of your property assessment amount. Unless you're an investor and you actually hold it as a secondary income, it's not your primary residence, then it's 2%, meaning that it's double the amount. So let's say that this, for whatever reason, let's assume that it assessed at, let's say it assessed at $200,000, which it won't. That's way too high for the property assessor. But if it did, that would mean that 2% is $4,000 a year. So I'm going to go ahead and say that my taxes are, put us on the safe side, I'm going to say $5,000 a year. It won't be that high, but just to calculate it. And then I also want to calculate my insurance. And I'm going to calculate my insurance at $1,200 a year. Now I've also got maintenance and other things in there. and I'm going to say that my maintenance is roughly $1,200. That's $100 a month. That's for anything that you kind of, as you have a plumbing leak or you have something else you need to send somebody out there, it's going to roughly approximate out to about $100 a door. So it's at least $1,200. Anyway, so you've got all this, and all that's going to total up to $8,600 a year. And now you're going to take that against however much you made. And so what it's going to say is that your net operating income for all of that ends up being $18,220 approximately. But they're going to calculate all this and say, okay, here's your net operating income. So now they'll say, okay, does that meet the criteria for the debt service that we want to give you? So what they look at is a debt service coverage ratio, DSCR. So your debt service here is going to be your payment amount times 12. What it ended up coming out to about is $12,562. Okay. Now your debt service coverage ratio is actually just the ratio of those two, your net operating income versus your debt service. And most places want to see a debt service of 1.2 or higher. So they say, okay, if you meet these criteria and the building makes enough money, so you have enough to do this, then we could look at the loan. But they also want to know that you, being the owner, do a personal guarantee on it. Like, can they come after you if none of this is paid? Something happens and the duplex burns to the ground and you didn't set up the insurance properly, they're going to come after you. So they want to know that you're good to go. So the other thing they're going to want is they want your personal credit score at roughly, most places want it at 740 plus. Some have gone lower than 720. I've seen them go down to, even one place was going to go down to all the way down to about 660 or 650. But when you do that, as your credit goes down, that percentage goes up. When you start getting down into below 700, this percentage starts to creep up to the 8% mark. So for what we're talking about, you've got to have a really good credit score too. So, but I don't need but I don't need the income, and that's the key idea. I don't need the income. They're going to take all the income from the actual company itself, but they want me to have good credit. Do I pay my bills? As long as I pay my bills and as long as they think that I'm good for it, they'll go ahead and give me all the extra loan that I want to do. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that not only does your unit that you buy have to go up via appraisal. So you do a purchase, you renovate it, and it's now worth more than what you originally paid. It needs to be worth substantially more than what you paid in order to get 75% of it to get back. You got to keep in mind, I had to originally get back $150. Now I had planned on only spending $30,000 in renovations. I didn't plan on doing the roof initially. I didn't plan on doing anything with the garage or the concrete or some of the other things that I put money into. And that was in order to keep my renovation cost down to the $30,000 mark, because I knew that I could get this place to be worth at least $160 at the time. But as soon as they said it's not worth $160, it's worth closer to $260, that changed some things for me, and that's why we went back and fixed the roof and did some other things, because we can put more money into it. But even if I can get all of this back out, they won't do it unless you have enough rent to do it. So why that's important is you could buy a very expensive property, say a $300,000 property, and it might be worth $350, or it might be worth $400. Let's say it's worth $400. So you know that you could go back to the bank and get 75% against that $400 to get you back your original $300, right? Problem is that if it doesn't rent well enough to cover that mortgage of $300, they won't do it. You got to go back to the debt service coverage ratio has to equal it. Otherwise, they won't touch it. So this is one of the reasons why single families are a lot harder to do this with, because you can't find single families that command rent high enough to be able to offset the mortgage amounts that you need to in order to get them where they need to be. So you've got to calculate all of this as part of the financing and figure out where you're going to be at and can you afford it. That's why the smaller multifamilies and duplexes and such do really well at being able to do this. This is also why you need to kind of have the income and the appreciation, not just one or the other. All right, so quick video on the financing, and hopefully it helped out some people. I know that there was a lot of questions that I was given from other people that I've met about how does this all work, that if you're able to purchase it with cash, how do you get your money back? Don't they just give you 80% and all those other funny things? And it's like, no, there's a lot more involved between the appraisals and then how much the renters make and how much the income is for the property. Then you have your net operating income, and you have all these other numbers that you have to look at. So hopefully this helps for a lot of other people, especially if you're getting started and trying to know. There's a lot of different ways to run numbers, but what I found was that there was very few times when people actually broke down who the lenders were and how much the lenders were willing to do. And there's a few of them out there. Don't give up. So hopefully if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I really appreciate you, and have a great day.